Welcome back. So following on from our first conversation, we are back to think about a different topic related to the current coronavirus situation that we find ourselves in. And we've got the same lovely 4 people in the Zoom room. And this is an opportunity for us to think well for ourselves, but also to think together and leave a little bit of space in between for the people who are watching this to do their own thinking as well. As is customary, we want to start with a round of appreciation, and the question for this round is, what is helping you to feel at ease at the moment? So what is helping you to feel at ease? Anyone can start us off, and then we'll head off in alphabetical sequence.
I think what's helped me feel at ease, I'm grateful for the kind of just the sense of slowing down a little. I think I had a lot of work, and then suddenly I didn't have a lot of work, which could be quite terrifying being self-employed, but it's really encouraged me to focus on the quality of some of those connections and to work out which ones need my help. And there's a sense that actually it's allowed me to separate a number of strands, so that sort of time and space to think a little more has allowed me to get a real sense of ease. I'd suggest that's what I'm grateful for there. Pete, what's your take on that?
Probably fairly similar, really. I mean, what's given me a sense of ease is just being able to slow down, think about things, stuff that was perhaps really urgent now is not so urgent, and it's kind of nice to refocus on the things that have been really important. So, you know, there's a lot of I guess social media memes around, you know, all the things that we thought were important, like expensive cars and stuff, but actually it's our relationships and the people in our lives that are the things that we value more than anything. So that's kind of given me a nice sense of ease, that getting back to that human element. How about you, Sarah?
I want to say wine, quite honestly. But that's just me joking a little bit. Those of people who really know me will know that that's not really a joke at all. What is giving me a sense of ease? I think on a day-to-day basis, the opportunity to get out and do some walking is helping me in terms of just continuing to feel some ease. But in the early days of this, actually, the thing that really helped was sitting down and doing some really pragmatic stuff, just picking up on what you both said around having quite a lot of work planned and then suddenly not having very much work as a self-employed person was the cause of quite a lot of anxiety early on. And so, yeah, just sitting down and working out the finances and the bills and all of that pragmatic stuff was really helpful. And whenever I notice myself now starting to kind of get a bit worried about those things, I can just kind of reconnect to the fact that I've done that piece of work and that I will be okay. So that for me is enabling a sense of ease on a day-to-day basis now.
So ease for me is a bit of a roller coaster. So sometimes I'm feeling loads of it, and then other times it just takes a massive dip, and I think, oh, I don't feel very easeful at all. So it's not necessarily a calm and steady state that I'm experiencing in terms of ease, but there are some things that have made me feel more at ease. So one is getting to grips with what do I actually need to do to hatch a plan, and then the plan has actually given me a real sense of ease, because within that plan I've carved out some purpose, some stuff that is going to be really important to me and to the people around me and the people that I want to help. So as that is becoming clearer, I notice that I have a greater sense of ease, and I know that the ease is always there. It's just that sometimes I can't see it, and it takes a thing to remind me that ease is available, because I think it kind of comes in waves and then falls away as it ebbs back out again. So But having a very clear eye on what matters most from a work and a human point of view, so with the family and stuff like that, and prioritizing some of that stuff over and above the work stuff, which I previously might have done a little bit too much. So yeah, the familiarity as well with platforms like this bring about a bit of ease. The fact that I can have a meaningful conversation with people in a setting that feels calm and comfortable. So yes, I'll stop there. So Sarah, you mentioned the word, and the word is anxiety. And one of the reasons for the conversation we want to have now is that people are identifying feelings of anxiety. And I think that is massively fueled by what we see in the media. So if people are looking at the mainstream media and social media, there's a lot of reinforcement of anxious feelings. And whilst anxiety isn't something that we should say is good or bad, and it's not as though we're making a values judgment on it, I do think it's being fueled by some things. And so people in the organisations that we work with, there is going to be a heightened state of arousal, a heightened state of anxiety for some of those people. So the question for us is, how do we approach the future with a sense of calm? And every credit to Pete for this amazing question, but how do we approach the future with a sense of calm?
Am I starting?
You can do. That would be nice.
I'll start. Okay. So seeing as I came up with the question was largely in response again to the direction of our thinking. So we wanted to talk about, you know, what would be useful for people who are struggling with anxious thoughts at the moment. And I think for me, the key thing is identifying where those anxious thoughts come from, and what they're really telling us. And very often we'll experience anxious thoughts and we think they're about the situation that we're about to face. So while you were describing how you were feeling at ease, sorry, my mic's scratching a bit. While you were describing how you were feeling at ease, I think I was imagining to myself, what am I going to talk about next? What am I going to talk about next? And immediately I started getting some feelings, and it wasn't telling me about what I'm talking about now, because that wasn't happening yet. It was just telling me about how I was thinking in that moment. And I think often it's recognizing, first of all, that we're off on a little jolly with our thinking when we're experiencing those anxious thoughts, but then also having that sensory awareness to notice that that's happening, and then recognize it for what it is. So it's almost not so much about necessarily doing something about it, but just recognizing what's going on in that moment and becoming aware of that first. So that's my first thoughts about it. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree absolutely, but I also think there's something about normalizing this a little bit, that, you know, the world has changed very rapidly in some very scary ways for most of us, and I think it's right to be experiencing some sense of anxiety around that. Maybe right's not the right word, but it's normal. It's normal to be experiencing that. So I think one of the things for me is, you know, initially that lots of people I was talking to were sort of saying, oh gosh, you know, I'm feeling like this, and I know I should be thinking positively, and I just wanted to say, and I often did say, just go with it, just allow yourself to feel like that, stop fighting it, it's okay. your whole brain and body have gone into threat response, and that's perfectly normal and natural and reasonable to feel that way at the moment. And you won't feel like that forever. You might not feel like that this afternoon, for instance. You probably won't feel like that tomorrow, but right now that's what you're experiencing, and that's okay. Let's not fight it. But I think you're also right that sometimes it's about where our brains are headed, and that we're often a little, what's the story that we're telling ourselves about this, as opposed to what's the reality of it. So keeping a close eye on that and redirecting when necessary is really helpful as well. But it's a temporary thing, isn't it? It's how you feel right now is how you feel right now, and how you feel later will be something different. So I think, again, just recognizing that and reminding yourself that it's not going to be forever. You won't feel like this for all, the whole time. So that's my initial thinking. Bev, what about you?
Okay, so I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with my daughter yesterday. Is my sound okay? It's just gone a bit wonky at this end. It's okay. I had a conversation with my daughter. So Lily, who's 10, has little waves of anxiety where she suddenly gets overwhelmed by some of her thoughts around this stuff and other things in her life. And what was really interesting was we talked about the fact that although she didn't like the feeling experience that she was having, and we talked about how we judge our thoughts differently. So we take some thoughts and we judge them really lightly, and we go with them very lightly. And then there are other thoughts, and we take them on board and we go, I'm having that one, I'm keeping hold of it, and I'm going to turn it into something really angry and horrible. And that was what Lily was doing. So she was making it into something that was deeper and darker and more sinister, and was creating that really bad feeling for her. Now, I'm fortunate in that Lily will tell me that stuff. So she calls me into her bedroom of an evening, Mummy, could you come to my room? And then she shares with me how she's thinking and how she's feeling. And that allows us to have those conversations. And it's a moment in the day where she's also super receptive, which is really interesting. And so she's ready to think differently and have a different experience of those thoughts that she's having. But that's one of the things that I've noticed. There was a whole bunch of other thoughts that flooded into my head as you were thinking, Sarah, but they've gone for now, but they'll come back. John, what are your thoughts on this?
Some of this is, I think it's about the language that we use to describe. We pivoted to a question around calm as opposed to a question around anxiety. You're going to get very different responses. I think so often we talk about people are suffering or struggling with, whereas in fact, if you can say they're dealing with or coping with almost positively assumptive questions, how are you coping with your sense of anxiety? Then that's an easier question than how you're dealing with suffering from something. So yeah, there's definitely something in the language. But also I think it's interesting how often it's not just the worry, that people then want to worry about the fact they're worrying, and then they worry about the worry about the worry. And hearing you talk about how it is with Lily in terms of being able to kind of unpack it, and she can come to you and say, before it gets really, really bad, she can say, this is what's going on for me. And you can look at it. I think having that level of awareness as a 10-year-old is great, and obviously, supported by you as a parent. But I think there's something about, you need to kind of do that work on yourself, to interrogate yourself, to know what your measures are, so that then you can kind of describe your experience to others, or to share it with other people. That's been my experience, because my anxiety is different to your anxiety, is different to Sarah's or Pete's or whatever, and we're not all talking about the same thing. So, and yet we're using the same words. So there's something there about the language. Finding a better way for us to speak about this stuff will help us approach it better. That's my sense of it.
Okay, so what more do we think about our approach in the future, or approaching the future with a sense of calm?
I think there's something for me about letting go of what we think we should be doing and how we should be dealing with things. And there's no map for this. There's no set of guidelines for this. Nobody's done this before. So all these people who are working from home and also homeschooling and also trying to keep their relationship going and also feel like they've got to fit in their hours worth of exercise and it's just never ending, isn't it? I wrote something down this morning because I saw something on Twitter that somebody had posted. It said, if you don't come out of this quarantine with a new skill, your side hustle started, or more knowledge, you never lacked time, you lacked discipline. You've probably seen, I can see some of you going, yeah.
I'm just like, really?
I'm kind of like, are we not dealing with enough? Is it not enough just to get through the day with some sense of calm, some sense of having achieved something today, of being some kind of productive person? And also, actually, on some days, is it not enough just to get out of bed, have a shower, and go and just do something that makes you feel like a normal human being when you're in this situation that we're in? That's okay. And if you have enough brain power for a side hustle, what were the other things? A new skill or more knowledge. Fantastic, great, brownie points for you. But can we just all stop putting huge expectations on ourselves, please?
I think there is
times. Let's just do what we can to feed ourselves and be human in some way, shape, or form.
But I think there's something competitive about anxiety. People want to be competitive in this situation, either doing more or having a tougher time than other people and stuff. There's a lot of people measuring themselves against others, and all of you are mental health first aiders. You'll know. I train some of you, so you'll know that measure is not helpful for people. This, the should, the must, the ought. Who wrote those shoulds? Who wrote those musts? Is that level of comparator is just not helpful, and to ramp it up in this situation, it's just farcical almost. Sorry, Pete, I felt like I cut across you there.
Sorry.
No.
And I tried too.
That's okay. No, I think for me, one of the big things about this question is how do we approach the future? And I guarantee there is nobody that I know, or nobody that I know that knows anybody who could have predicted that this is what we were going to be facing in March and April of 2020. Absolutely nobody. And so very often when we're feeling these anxious thoughts rising about something that's going to happen in the future, who could have predicted this, for God's sake? So we're not notoriously good at predicting what the future is going to be like anyway. So does it help us to sort of plan for every eventuality that could be horrific or catastrophic, or is it better to be in a place where we're appreciating where we are right now and hoping for the best?
I mean, I think back to my time in the military. There's no way you're going to know where you're sent with some of these things, because I mean, you can argue that they've been predicting pandemics for a long time. We've had a couple of near misses. But this is a black swan in terms of when it happens. Yeah. But in the military, you weren't taught to know how to do everything, but you were taught to remain responsive. You were taught to remain capable. You were taught to bring the training to bear, to lead, to do whatever. So again, when we come back to how do you retain the sense of calm in the future, you know what your limitations are. You know what things will motivate you, what things will give you rest and relaxation, what things will support you. It's about knowing sense of purpose type stuff rather than the handbook for everything. In my time at the Tube, they went to a way of working where they kind of almost had a procedure for everything, and it became this huge thing. You could never find a procedure quickly on a shelf, instead of going back to, okay, how will you operate safely, broadly, and then some of that stuff comes behind it. So for me, there's about how do you as a person want to pitch up in tough situations, and then from that we'll find whichever tough situation you're in.
And that you're describing, John, makes me think about you can only access all of that knowledge and experience and examples that you have stored away in your brain if you have a clear head, if you're thinking clearly in that moment. And of course, heightened levels of arousal and anxiety are the things that stop us from doing that, because our brain doesn't work that way. Our brain gets into that fight or flight or freeze response, instead of going, yes, I know, I shall access all the wise corners of my mind and bring all of these things to bear. So I think that makes sense, what you're saying about how you're trained in the military means that you don't think about these things. You kind of just go with that in the moment and then act accordingly. So I really like that as a
I mean, there is an
analogy.
There is an old saying that no plan survives contact with the enemy. That you can make it up, you can know how it's going to go, but you know what, you'll be making up another one the next minute later. You know.
But on top of that as well, no one has done this before. Pete, you were saying we couldn't have planned for this, so essentially we're all winging it anyway. So there isn't anything to worry about. So nobody should be judged for what they do, judged for making mistakes. And yet, what I've seen again today on the TV is people in positions of power being judged for their mistakes. They're not invincible. They've not done this before either. And I think compassion and how we show up for the people and demonstrating compassion is a big way to create calm for other people. My words aren't coming out in a very eloquent order today. They're just going like bleh.
But I think there's, I mean, you think a number of us have worked or are working with the NHS at some level, and there's all this, hey, you know, they're all great people, and then what, and suddenly all the politicians ever became bad and all the NHS people became good. The reality is far more complex, isn't it? That actually people made decisions based on what they knew at the time, what bag of money they had within the treasury at that time, or, you know, how much money the trust had locally or whatever. And it's been found that actually we couldn't have planned for this, or we didn't know it was going to go through so quickly or whatever. But for me, there's something about, you're either in the problem or you're in the solution. And for a lot of people, you know, they're really happy being in the problem and spending a lot of time wallowing in that. For me, I like to be a little bit more in the solution. Now, I can't plan a solution for a pandemic, so my solution has to be what's my solution to be resourceful for me, which then allows me to be resourceful in a conversation like we're having today, which allows us to be resourceful for a client or something. You know, I have to do it step by step almost. Yeah.
So there's a really nice phrase, Kirsty Mack uses it, and I think it's Margaret Wheatley's phrase of being an island of sanity. And I talked to Lily about that, and I said the only thing I need to do for you, Lily, is be calm, and for you to know that I am your little island of sanity, that I'm calm, I'm okay with this. So watch for the signals from me about how I'm reacting to these things, and I'm not trying to suppress how I'm feeling, but I'm okay about everything that happens. And so Lily's getting that sense of calm. So that translates directly into leadership and management, where there's a real need for those people in senior positions to ooze that calm and that sanity, but also to be human and vulnerable and normal with all of this. So they've got to experience and demonstrate an awful lot of stuff, but it's all okay for them to do all of those things. But I do think the biggest value that some organizational leaders can bring at the moment is just to be that calm, be that grounded, really calm's the only word I can think of, but that grounded, stable,
anchored.
Yeah. Thank you, anchored point in people's lives where they are predictable and approachable and easy to access in the moments, like when Lily goes over the Alexa and goes, "Mummy, will you come to my room?" We need managers to be like that, so they go, "Yeah, of course," and off they go and they do the calm response thing. I think there's definitely a need for that.
That's not necessarily about having all the answers, though, is it, Bev? Just to be really clear for people, that's about being, like you say, being a human being, not necessarily having all the answers, but being accessible and being approachable and being able to listen and have that conversation when you need to.
Yeah, and so when I think about child rearing, I don't have all the answers for Lily. She's a human being in her own right, so she knows from her own perspective and from her experience now what is right for her. just the same as I think we should treat all adults in that same way, that they know what's right for them. But by bringing sort of enveloping people in that calm that we can create, people get that chance to think, for their thinking to settle, for them to then be resourceful and dip into all that good stuff that they know. And Lily, like everyone else on the planet, can work it out if given the right conditions. And sometimes those conditions don't exist, but if we can create them for people, then I think that's a massive service that we do for the people in our lives, you know, however we touch them, whether that's personally or professionally.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're talking about how do we face the future with a sense of calm, and for me that's about not thinking too far ahead. I don't know what August, September looks like. At the moment I don't even know what May looks like in this world that we're living in, and if I start to think about, you know, trying to put some kind of strategy in place, or what, you know, what happens if I get into that bit of a cycle of what if, and I know that can, for me anyway, can become a bit of a catastrophe space that I'm then operating in. But I can, you know, I can plan for today, I can plan for tomorrow, I can think about what I want to achieve this week, and that feels much more manageable. So for me it's about just, yeah, don't think, take it one step at a time, don't think too far ahead.
And there's something for me in that about it's an NLP thing about chaining states, where you can't go all the way to feeling great about the world right now because you're feeling pretty low, but could you go from feeling pretty low to feeling a little bit less low, to feeling okay with the situation, to feeling like you've got options, to feeling like you've got resources. So, you know, if you just working your way through bit by bit rather than expecting it all at once, I think that acceptance thing, isn't it, that, you know, God grant me the serenity type stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge element in there of maybe curating what you expose yourself to as well. You know, really ramping up the filters. I watch, usually I watch the Daily Briefing, but I don't watch any other news. I do a little bit of Facebook interaction, but I tend to, you know, scroll straight by all the negativity and the social shaming, and, you know, all the things that create these heightened levels of you know, distress or panic or distrust, or so I tend to just scoot straight by them because I don't need them. They don't make my life appreciably better. So, you know, I'm really filtering for the stuff that, you know, makes sense for me to filter for. So I'm looking at, you know, when people are doing things for neighbours, you know, that maybe they haven't seen the neighbour for a day or two, so they knock on the door and speak through the letterbox, just, you know, is there anything I can get for you? Or, you know, the posts where somebody's done something really nice for somebody else. So yeah, that's, you know, for me, one of the key things is to change that filtering element.
And I think that's a key skill in life, not just in coronavirus, isn't it? Is to okay, how many balls can I keep in the air at the moment? How many things do I need to juggle and stuff? And I think a lot of people feel a variety of pressures. It comes back to something you were saying earlier, Sarah, about, you know, there's work, there's home, there's homeschooling now, there's, you know, all of these things, and finding your 5 minutes to do this. It's like, okay, at what point do I want to step away from all of those responsibilities and just go, you know what, tonight it is a glass of wine, and that's how I'm going to feel calmer tonight, and being okay with that, and that being a conscious choice. Because I think a lot of this is, if we can take conscious choices, like you don't with your, you know, your filtering of the news, and I don't watch a massive amount either. I don't watch TV generally, so that rules out a whole filter for me, and a whole line of it anyway. So. But I think, again, it's a conscious approach of this, isn't it?
So let's. Oh, sorry, Sarah. Go ahead.
Just being kind. Just being kind to ourselves. There's a whole lot about being kind to other people, but can we just be a bit kind to ourselves, please, and just take some of that expectation away? I was chatting to my sister yesterday, and she's got a 3.5-year-old, and she's got a job that she's doing from home, and she said, do you know what? If he watches a little bit more TV or spends a little bit more time playing games on the CBeebies channel on the iPad, then, and that's what allows me to have a bit of, 5 minutes just of calm and peace, then so be it. I'm not beating myself up about that. And I think that's so important. Let's just apply that to so many things, just be kind to yourself, and stop expecting perfection.
So that feels like a really nice point to pause, actually, with that final thought, Sarah. So I think we will end our thinking there. End our thinking sounds a bit final. We'll pause our thinking there. There was a good word when I used it first time around. Pause our thinking there. And I will come back with our next question in a little while. So thank you very much, everybody, for thinking with me and with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.